You know that moment when your heart's racing so hard you can hear it in your ears? Yeah, this is that moment. The studio lights were blinding, cameras locked in, and the teleprompter rolled my words like a countdown to disaster. Every journalist dreams of breaking a story that changes the world, but no one tells you what it feels like when that story destroys yours. My name's Anna Sterling, and tonight I'm about to report the one headline I prayed I'd never read. They say blood is thicker than water, but when your last name becomes the headline, you've got to decide. Do you report it? Or bury it? I used to believe truth was sacred, that it had no sides, no faces, no mercy. But that was before I found out the people I loved the most had built $100 million empire on fraud. Before I learned that my mother, the woman who raised me to chase honesty like religion, was the architect of a global lie. And now, here I am, microphone in hand, about to burn the Sterling name on live television. In 30 seconds, I'll go live. In 30 seconds, I'll torch my own bloodline. In 30 seconds, the truth won't belong to me anymore. Because when truth knocks, you don't get to choose who it destroys. People think power comes from money. It doesn't. Power comes from reputation, from how loudly your name echoes in rooms you've never stepped into. And in my world, the name Sterling echoed everywhere. I grew up in a glass palace on the edge of New York, walls tall enough to keep out guilt, but not the truth. My mother, Evelyn Sterling, ran Sterling Global, a billion-dollar clean energy empire built on good PR and photogenic charity galas. She was the kind of woman magazines called the future of ethical business. My father, a quiet investor, passed when I was 12, leaving Mom to build her empire solo. And she did, with grace, ambition, and a spine of steel. Growing up, I thought she was untouchable. Our dinners weren't about food, they were about influence. Senators called her Evie. Billionaires toasted her champagne. Every Sunday, she'd tell me, "Anna, the world doesn't reward honesty. It rewards results." But I was too stubborn to listen. I wanted to be the opposite of her. While she built an empire, I chased truth. Journalism was my rebellion, my way of proving you could succeed without deception. I clawed my way up the newsroom ladder. Late nights, double shifts, crap pay, but I made it. By 29, I was hosting Horizon News' primetime investigative segment. Viewers called me fearless. My mom called me naive. We didn't talk much anymore. She said she was too busy saving the world, and I was too busy trying to expose it. But no matter how different we were, one thing tied us together. Our last name carried weight. That weight was about to crush us both. The night it started, I was prepping for a piece on the Calderon energy scandal, some CEO funneling government funds offshore. It was supposed to be routine, a dig into corruption, another greedy corporation story. But during my research, a whistleblower reached out. His name was Daniel Cross, nervous guy, former financial analyst. He said Calderon wasn't alone, that the fraud ran deeper, involving their so-called eco-partners. He said, "You ever heard of Sterling Global?" My heart froze. I laughed it off, said, "That's my mom's company. They're cleaner than bottled water." Daniel didn't laugh. He leaned in and whispered, "Then why are there Cayman accounts hiding Calderon's kickbacks?" I stared at him, trying to read if he was bluffing. But he had data. Real data, transactions, offshore ledgers, signatures. And one signature I'd seen 1,000 times, my mother's. That night I couldn't breathe. I drove home, heart pounding, hands shaking. I told myself there had to be an explanation, a clerical error, a setup, something. I called her. "Mom," I said, "I need to ask you something about Sterling's partnerships." Silence. Then that same calm CEO voice she used at board meetings. "Sweetheart, some things are too complicated for you to understand." That sentence hit like a punch. Because that's what she used to say when I was little, when I caught her lying about where Dad was. When I asked why we donated millions to charities no one could find, that's when I knew this wasn't just business. This was personal. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window, city lights flickering outside, wondering if truth could ever coexist with loyalty. The next morning, I walked into the newsroom pretending everything was fine, but deep down I already knew. This story wasn't about Calderon Energy anymore. It was about us, and once I opened that door, there was no going back. There's a weird kind of silence that comes with betrayal. It's not loud or explosive, it's just empty. That night, the newsroom felt like a church after midnight. Everyone gone, screens still humming. I sat there scrolling line after line of transactions that didn't make sense unless you already knew the game. And my mom? She'd been playing it for years. I kept digging. Offshore accounts, shell companies, political donations disguised as clean energy grants. It was all there. Names, signatures, timestamps. Every fake charity, every money trail led back to Sterling Global. I called Miles, my producer and the only guy in that building I actually trusted. When he showed up, I was still staring at the screen like it might blink and tell me I was wrong. He looked at the files and said, "Jesus, Anna, this is your mom?" I nodded, couldn't even speak. He sighed, leaned back and said, "You know what happens if we run this?" "Yeah," I said. "Everything ends. We could have buried it. Pretended it didn't exist. But every time I thought about looking away, I saw her face, smiling in charity ads, shaking hands with senators, promising a cleaner world while she was bleeding it dry. So we did what journalists do. We started verifying, weeks blurred together. I traveled to DC, London, and Zurich, chasing leads, hunting down offshore witnesses, double-checking financial records. Every door I knocked on opened to another secret. One former accountant broke down crying, saying she'd tried to quit but was threatened into silence. I recorded everything. My drive was filled with evidence that could destroy Sterling Global in one broadcast. But every discovery came with a cost. Reporters started calling, sniffing around. Someone leaked that Horizon News was investigating a massive energy cover-up. My mother called me that night, her voice sharper than glass. "Anna, whatever you're working on, drop it, now." I asked, "Are you scared of the truth or just of me?" She didn't answer, just hung up. That silence hurt more than any lie. I knew she'd try to stop me. She had money, lawyers, connections. But what she didn't have was control anymore. The story was moving on its own now. And the more she fought, the more it looked like guilt. Then, one night, Miles called me. His voice was shaking. "Anna," he said, "you need to see this." He forwarded an encrypted file leaked from a government investigation. I opened it, and there it was. The final nail. A payment chain linking Sterling Global directly to Calderon's bribe accounts. The sender's name, Evelyn Sterling. I felt something inside me crack. That name used to mean safety, home, childhood birthdays and Sunday dinners. Now it was just evidence. For days, I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. Every time I saw my reflection, I saw her eyes staring back, the same gray eyes that taught me right from wrong. And now I was about to destroy her with them. Miles tried to reason with me. He said, "You can't be both the daughter and the journalist. You gotta pick a side." I told him, I already did the day she lied to me. The day before the broadcast, my mom sent me one last message. No greeting, no love. Just, "You'll regret this, Anna. You think truth makes you noble? It makes you alone." She wasn't wrong. The next morning, Horizon News was a war zone. Legal was panicking, phones blowing up, sponsors threatening to pull funding. My story had leaked, and half the country was waiting for it to air. I sat in the makeup chair, staring into the mirror while a stylist tried to hide how wrecked I looked. My producer whispered, "It's your call. We can still pull the segment." But I knew the choice had already been made. Minutes to air. My heart felt like it was trying to punch its way out of my chest. Miles handed me a water bottle, said quietly, "If you do this, you'll never see her the same again." I smiled, shaky, broken, and said, "I already don't." Then came the red light. 3, 2, 1. We're live. "Good evening," I said, my voice steadier than my hands. "Tonight we bring you a Horizon News exclusive, an investigation that exposes a $100 million corporate fraud scandal spanning continents." I walked the audience through the evidence, the transactions, the fake subsidiaries. Each word felt heavier than the last. And then the moment hit. The final name on the list appeared. For a second, everything froze. The room went quiet. My throat tightened. I looked at Miles behind the camera. He just nodded. So I said it. Documents confirm that the CEO of Sterling Global, Evelyn Sterling, authorized illegal financial transfers connected to the Calderon energy fraud network. I'd just outed my own mother to the world. The broadcast exploded. Viewers flooded social media, hashtags trending within minutes. Sterling scandal, truth vs. blood. My inbox filled with praise, hate, threats, you name it. But all I could hear was silence. Because somewhere, across the city, she was watching. I imagined her sitting alone in that penthouse. Perfect posture, pearls on, the TV glow painting her face. I imagined the flicker in her eyes when she realized it wasn't a stranger who took her down. It was her daughter. When the cameras cut, I didn't move. Miles put his hand on my shoulder and said softly, "You did it." But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like ashes. I walked out of that newsroom knowing two things. 1, I'd just told the truth. And 2, I'd never get my family back again. Outside, the night air was cold. Sirens echoed somewhere far off. I looked up at the skyline, Sterling Tower glowing against the dark, and whispered, "It's over, Mom." But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Because the truth never really ends. It just keeps echoing. The morning after the broadcast, the city didn't feel the same. Billboards flashed headlines I wrote. Coffee shops whispered my name. But fame, if you can even call it that, felt like a punishment. My phone buzzed nonstop. Interviews, book deals, news outlets begging for exclusives. I ignored them all, because none of it mattered. Not when my family name was now synonymous with fraud. The first real silence came 2 days later. A letter, no address, no signature, just a single page. "You did what I couldn't. You told the truth." "Mom," I read it 5 times trying to understand. Was it guilt? Was it pride? Maybe both. Maybe that was the closest thing to love she had left to give, but the world didn't stop to let me process it. Sterling Global collapsed within a week. Board members resigned, investigations launched, stock prices fell like dominoes. And through it all, every headline had one face, mine. The journalist who exposed her own mother. It sounded noble, cinematic. Until the lights turned off. Because once the story ends, you're left with silence. And silence can be brutal. Friends disappeared. Sponsors cut ties. Even the network distanced itself, calling my story a conflict of interest. I wasn't the hero they thought I'd be. I was the reminder that truth costs something. A month later, I went back to the newsroom. Not to work, just to stand where it all happened. The desk was empty. The live sign still flickered above me. For the first time, I realized I hadn't just exposed a lie. I'd freed myself from one. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't fix everything. It doesn't heal overnight. But it clears the fog. And once you see clearly, you can't unsee. So yeah, my name is still a headline. But at least it's one I wrote myself. A year later, people still ask me if I'd do it again. If I'd still go live knowing it would shatter everything I built. And every time, I say the same thing. You can't unsee the truth once it's right in front of you. Because truth isn't about loyalty or revenge. It's about peace. And peace doesn't come cheap. I learned that journalism isn't just about exposing lies. It's about facing them, even when they wear your mother's smile. It's about knowing that sometimes doing the right thing means standing completely alone. People think heroes wear capes. But sometimes heroes just hold microphones. And tremble. The world eventually moved on. New scandals took over. New villains rose. But somewhere between the noise and silence, I found something real again. My voice. It wasn't loud. It wasn't perfect. But it was honest. And maybe that's enough. They say when your last name becomes a headline, you either live in its shadow or rewrite it. I chose to rewrite mine. Not for fame. Not for forgiveness. But for freedom. Because in the end, the truth might break you. But it's the only thing that'll set you free.